Am I the asshole for not letting my husband bond with our unborn baby? IF 26 am 5 months pregnant with a baby boy. This is my first one with my husband M31 and we're both excited to expand our family. Once my belly started showing, my husband started putting his hands on it constantly. The problem is that I have an anxiety disorder and don't like to be touched, especially when it's sudden. He knows this, but he puts his hand on my belly randomly and refuses to remove it when asked. He does it all the time. Sometimes when I'm asleep and also when we're with family he'd put his hand on my belly, sometimes even lifts my top. Every time I tell him to stop it because it's uncomfortable, he tells me this is his son too and he needs his bonding time. Last night was my final straw. We were out on the front porch with my friends and he pulled me from behind and wrapped both arms around my belly. My friends were weirded out. I quietly whispered to him to let go, but he said, "Don't mind us," meaning him and his baby. "We're just here bonding." I had it. I lashed out and moved away from him while telling him to stop it. He looked at me confused, then turned around and walked back inside the house. He avoided talking to anyone for the rest of the gathering, then blew up on me when it was just us and said I shouldn't have yelled at me for what he did, as he thought it was completely normal. I told him I already expressed how uncomfortable I was. He said he was my husband and that he was meaning to bond with his son and not me, and then told me to get over myself and stop acting like a sensitive little girl. I got mad and told him he is no longer allowed to do it, and he got angry and said that's not my call and I can't act selfish and prevent him from bonding with his son. He then went to vent to his mom, and when I pointed out how wrong it was to do that, he told me I have no issue going to stay with my mom every time we fight, so what's good for the goose is good for the gander. I was speechless and had no response. He said I owe him an apology for lashing out on him in front of my friends like that. Not the asshole. The fact your husband is stating that you've given up bodily autonomy by becoming pregnant is very disturbing. He said, "That's not your call." Excuse me? It's your body. He's treating you like a garden for his prize seed. I get wanting to bond with his son, but to completely disrespect you and disregard your wishes and own concerns? Therapy or divorce ASAP. Not the asshole. Not the asshole. He doesn't get to violate your personal space to bond. He's not. He's being weird and crossing boundaries. Honey, just go and stay with your mother. Also, go to counseling ASAP. I'm afraid that once baby is here, he'll just take him out of your arms just because he wants to bond with the baby. I don't think it's weird for a man to want to feel the baby and try to make it more real, but your husband is acting like you're an incubator and that your feelings don't matter. That's not a good sign for the future. Not the asshole. Not the asshole. You still have the rights to your own body even if there's another inside. If I were you, I'd start grabbing his balls and explaining that I'm just bonding with all the babies he's storing in there. Not the asshole. Your husband does not respect you as an autonomous being. He is treating you like the incubator for his son that he deserves access to whenever he wants. This is repeated disregard for your boundaries and what triggers you and makes you uncomfortable. What he is doing is incredibly disrespectful, dehumanizing and cruel. He sees you as his property and that your boundaries and feelings do not matter. He then manipulates and gaslights you to portray himself as the victim when he is the one violating you and triggering you. You need to get away from this abusive creep, as it's going to get worse. You're not an incubator, but considering that he sees you as one and refuses to respect your boundaries is an indication of what your life is going to be like if you stay with this man. Not the asshole, and here's your location flag. Not the asshole. He wants to bond. Great. He can do it after the birth. Until then it's still your body he's grabbing after having been repeatedly warned not to do so. He needs to respect this boundary. I have no idea how to make him understand because my husband would never dream of repeatedly and intentionally violating a boundary, but try and find a way to explain to him that just 'cause you're married it doesn't give him the right to touch you without consent. Am I the asshole for telling off a lady at the beach who asked my son to cover up? I'm 37 a little on the fence if I'm an asshole for what happened. My son, 17, and I hit the beach yesterday for the first time in years. A few years ago my son was in a car accident, thank God he survived. However, he was left with some serious burns all over his shoulder and torso. He's had skin graft surgeries on more affected areas. It's been a long process for him and all of us. His scars are still pretty visible, so that's something he's been very self-conscious about. It took him lots of time and therapy until he was able to even look at himself in the mirror. It hurt a lot to see him so depressed, being so self-conscious about his body. My son is much more comfortable now. He can look at himself, take his shirt off to go swimming in our pool. Only thing he hasn't done is be shirtless in public, which he wanted to do, so we decided to have a beach day, just us, me and him. I'm guessing you can tell where this is going. There were some kids staring and pointing when we got close to them, but my son ignored while we kept playing ball in the water. Later on, this lady comes to ask, and she's saying it in a fake sweet voice, if my son would mind putting his shirt back on. It's not that she has a problem with it, but her family and all their kids are here and it's too visible to ignore. Some of the kids are a little freaked out by it, she said. My son, to my surprise, tells the lady they can look somewhere else instead of at his scars if it's such a big deal. She got irritated real fast. Now she's looking at me expecting me to do something. But I pretty much said the same thing. If the kids are so freaked out about it, maybe now is a good time to show them not every body is the same and it's nothing to be scared of. This lady would not let it go. To avoid my son hearing more than he needed to, we walked off away from the water, then gave this lady a piece of my mind. I told her it's people like her that made it so hard for him to be comfortable in his own body, so why doesn't she shut the fuck up and get out of my face? If it bothers her so much, then she can get the hell out with her family. She told me I'm such a disrespectful shithead because she came here asking politely and instead I reacted with nothing but hostility. They did end up leaving. My son didn't want to be in the water anymore after that, but luckily after a while he wasn't so bummed out anymore. Thing is, I've never had an interaction with someone like that before. Let alone cussed at a total stranger. Yes, I know how kids can be, so maybe for hers they found it scary. But also this whole thing made me go into protective Papa Bear mode, knowing what my son has gone though, so I'd like to know if I was an asshole for how I treated her. Not the asshole. Here's the thing. She was saying it in a polite tone, that doesn't mean it's polite. There's a difference. The polite thing to do would have been to tell the kids what you said, that everyone is different, and there's nothing to be scared or ashamed of. Your son is a fucking warrior, having gone through what he has. I wish you both all the best. Not the asshole. She was out of order to ask in the first place. But even if it was a polite request, spoiler alert it wasn't, then a polite answer, no, should have been accepted. Her reaction shows it was, in fact, a veiled rude demand. And she doubled down. And it was only after being firmly assertive you cussed at her. At that point, she deserved it. More to the point, your son deserved your backing. You weren't you were awesome. Not the asshole. You said it, you were probably tired of hearing someone talking about your son's scars. It has been building up for a while, and the lady, who thought she would describe herself to you as the messenger, finally broke that last straw. She probably hoped you would not shoot the messenger, but that failed, and rightfully so. I can tell her that her bathing suit is way too small for her body in a polite way, but that does not mean it is okay for me to say, "Your son should be proud." Reminds me of the quote from David Rossi, Joe Mantegna, Criminal Minds. Scars remind us where we've been, they don't have to dictate where we are going. Not the asshole. You stood up for your son and the lady was being a shallow asshole. You did what you should have done. Not the asshole. She came over to shame your son. You suggested rightfully that it was a moment she could model tolerance and understanding for differences to her children. She was mad that she doesn't control reality, and you got mad because she's an asshole. She shouldn't dish if she can't take. Your son learned an important lesson. He can advocate for himself and you will back him up. Congratulate your son and tell him you saw his bravery and growth and that you are proud. Not the asshole. Your son is a badass and has a great dad. I would have probably been less diplomatic and answered something along the lines of her mouth making me uncomfortable and asking her to cover it up to ease my discomfort. Not the asshole, and dad, you freaking rock. As does your son. Please continue to cuss out strangers who react to your son like this. I'm so on your side. I wish I lived near you so we could all go to the beach together. I'm nowhere near as polite as you are. Edited because I thought this was mom. Dad, you freaking rock. Not the asshole. F.K. her and people like her. Good on you standing up for your kid. Keep doing it. No one likes being told they are idiots. But the idiots need to hear it. Repeatedly and bluntly sometimes. Am I the asshole for blocking my mother for taking a gift that my boyfriend bought me? I, 23F, blocked my mother for taking a gift that my boyfriend gave to me for my birthday. I spent my birthday, April 13th, with my boyfriend a couple days ago, and one of the gifts included a ceramic cupcake. About a month ago, we were sharing stories about our childhood when I mentioned a particular story that I didn't realize still bothered me. A long time ago, I went to a pottery shop where I painted a pre-made, ceramic cupcake at my friend's birthday party. I chose the cupcake because you can store small things, for example, jewelry, in it. I worked really hard to paint it and it looked really nice. It looked so nice that my mom wanted it for herself. So, we played a game of cards. If my mom won, she got to keep the cupcake. If I won, I got McDonald's. Unfortunately, I lost. A year later, I talked to my mom about how I wished I didn't bet the cupcake, and she offered to play another round of cards. In the end, I won, but she refused to give the cupcake back. This resulted in an argument, but with me being a child, I couldn't really do anything about it. Fast forward to a month ago, I brought this up to my boyfriend while joking around. However, he said I seemed really passionate about it when I was explaining it. So, he tried to find something that matched my description, and considering that he's never seen it, I would say he was pretty spot on. I really appreciated the gift because it showed how attentive and caring my boyfriend was. As such, I kept the cupcake on my desk, so that when I'm studying for my final exams, I could look at it and be reminded of positive thoughts only. My mom came today, April 16th, to celebrate my belated birthday. When she entered my room, her eyes immediately went to the cupcake on my desk, so I explained to her the story behind it. She laughed and said, "Wouldn't it look nice if I had both?" I laughed with her, but deep down, I was annoyed. Throughout the night, she kept making side comments about the cupcake, but I mostly brushed them off. When she had finally left my place, I entered my room to see that the cupcake was missing. I called her repeatedly until she finally picked up. At first, she said she didn't know where it was before finally admitting that she put in her purse. She claimed that she wanted to take a picture of the two cupcakes together. I was so upset that I immediately hung up. My mom lives about 2 hours away and it would be hard to get there without a car. This made me feel teary-eyed and eventually, I started crying. Between this and final exams, I felt very overwhelmed. I sent her a text message basically saying how upset I was and she apologized, but I was still upset. I told her, "Don't call or text me. Send me an email if it's an emergency," and blocked her phone number. However, after thinking about it, I'm starting to feel bad. Am I just overreacting? Am I the asshole? ETA. Wow. I didn't really expect this to blow up. The incident with the original cupcake happened when I was in grade 5, so I was either 10 or 11. Calling the cops is not an option. She pays a good chunk of my university expenses, and her job requires her to have a clean record. The last thing I would want is for her to get fired. TW, my mother does have a history of mental health issues. She was diagnosed with depression and bipolar II disorder in 2015. I won't go into details, but I feel like permanently going NC with my mom might cause her to spiral again. This is partially why I feel like an asshole, because I know how much my mom depends on me for emotional support. The cupcake isn't an isolated incident, but it's been years since I've had any major issues with my mom. I wish I could share all the stories I have with her, but then this would turn into a novel and I'm sure the mods wouldn't be too happy with that cold sweat smile. I will keep you guys updated if I get the cupcake. For now, I'm just going to focus on my final exams. Not the asshole. What is that woman thinking? Taking the first cupcake made her an awe, but this is the icing on the cupcake. Face with symbols on mouth. Not the asshole. Your mom is horrible. What kind of a person takes an item like that away from a child and then, when they lose it in another bet, they refuse to give it up? Then goes and steals a very similar item many years later? From their own child? She is horrid. Your boyfriend sounds very thoughtful and sweet. Not the asshole. Get both of the cupcakes back and then block her for real until she apologizes for stealing from you. Not the asshole. She stole from you and you're feeling bad? Not the asshole. There's something wrong with your mom and this showed her how serious you ate. Frankly, you should keep limited contact with her until she can regain your trust. Not the asshole. She stole from you. I'd honestly call the cops on her and let her see how funny it is then. Edit. Please chill. I literally didn't know about her university expenses when I wrote this. Not the asshole. Your mum was cruel taking the first cupcake. Taking the second one, I have no words. Keep away from her. Not the asshole. Your mother stole your property. If she wanted a picture of the two of them together, she could have brought hers with her next time she came to visit. Instead, she decided to steal it and lie about stealing it. Sounds like she just came up with the first thing that came to mind when you found out she had actually stolen it. If you hadn't asked her to the point she finally admitted to it, I doubt she would have ever given it back. You are not overreacting, she is the one that committed a theft. If it were my mother and she didn't bring whatever she stole from me back immediately, I'd personally call the cops on her. You are definitely not the asshole and not overreacting. Am I the asshole for not letting my fiancé's niece try my engagement ring? I, F36, recently got engaged to my fiancé, M34. He's in the military and has an extended family. He's close to his sister and 21-year-old niece. His Bill is deceased. When I met his niece, she seemed sweet but kept making passive-aggressive comments about me. Like how I look older than my fiancé, how we're incompatible just due to our star signs or whatever. And when we announced my engagement, she told my fiancé he is moving too fast. We've been dating for almost 3 years, LDR. Yesterday I visited my future in-laws and his sister and niece were there. His niece saw my ring and commented on it saying, "I bet this is the fanciest one you've ever got." Just like my uncle. I felt offended and thought that was rude, but I ignored her because of how Mill was looking at me. But she, his niece, asked if she could try the ring on. I was taken aback. I said no. She asked again, but I still said no. Next thing I knew, she got up from her seat and stood in front of me, extending her arm, expecting me to take the ring off and give it to her. I was like, WTF? I said, "Please go back to your seat." I already said no. Sil said it was fine, but I said I just didn't feel comfortable. Sil then looked at me quizzically and was like, "Are you serious? That's his niece, just let her try it on." I said I'm sorry but no. Niece threw a fit and went upstairs. Her mom said I had no reason to act like this and said she didn't get what my problem is. I took my purse about to leave after she kept berating me for not letting her daughter try the ring. Mill asked me to stay but I insisted on leaving. Sil tried calling me and because I needed time to answer she sent a text saying my behavior was alarming and that she will bring this incident up to her brother when he gets back. Becca USW. She sensed that I'm trying to drive a wedge between her daughter and my fiancé for whatever reason. We haven't talked after that and I really don't know what to think of this. I don't know if I acted poorly, but I'll leave this to you. Maybe I'm missing something. Am I the asshole? Background for some clarification. My fiancé has 2 sisters and he's close to this particular sister and her daughter. Her daughter hangs out a lot with him and sometimes refers to him as Kev. I found that a bit weird, but since he's the youngest uncle, he has 2 older brothers too. Then I thought no problem. She follows all his SM accounts and even knows some of his friends. Also she drives his car whenever he visits and uses his workout equipment as well. I talked to him about some boundaries but his sister gave me no chance and accused me of putting space between the family and him, so I kept my mouth shut. NTA. Niece is acting like she's in love with your husband. WTF. She's jealous of his attention towards you. I'd stay away from her and her mom for a while. Not the asshole. Brr, this is a major moment in your relationship. Doubly so due to you having been in LDR. However, your fiancé behaves when told the story is a very strong indicator of what the rest of your interactions with your in-laws will be like and how he'll mediate. Not the asshole. A grown woman insulted you, then asked to borrow an expensive and/or sentimental item. I'm curious to hear how your fiancé handled the resulting hissy fit. Not the asshole. You don't have to let this little shit try on an expensive ring. Or use your phone. Or borrow your car. Or any other item you own. Period. Not the asshole. Niece is weirdly possessive of your fiancé, and his family indulges her. Love the part where his sister is going to go tattle to him that you didn't let her do whatever she wanted. If you're confident in your fiancé's relationship with you, you can just brush off these harpies. She sensed that I'm trying to drive a wedge between her daughter and my fiancé for whatever reason. Well, yeah, he's going to marry you, and whatever father figure relationship they have is fine. Whatever else going on in her head is not fine and needs to stop. Not the asshole. Sounds like your fiancé has taken over the father role for his niece and both his sister and niece have very blurred boundaries and a lot of jealousy when it comes to him. This is something you need to have a long talk to your fiancé about, as problems will arise in the future when they detest. Try to prove that they are still priority. I wish you the very best. I expected the niece to be like 10 or 12, which would be a normal question from a quizzical child at that age. It's very weird that a 20-year-old woman demands to try on another woman's engagement ring. She sounds like she is obsessed with her uncle. I'd stay away from them. Not the asshole. First one to respond that you are definitely not the asshole, so don't feel bad at all. Your niece is spoiled and expects to get what she wants. No woman should ever let someone else try on her engagement ring. You can say you think it's bad luck, but you don't need an excuse. Yaut fiancé should let his mother and sister know that is just not done. If he sides with them, you have a problem.